Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. I'd like to thank Ahrefs for sponsoring this show. Confessions is a short-form chat about pretty much everything in SEO, but just not from the conventional viewpoint. Today's topic is global in a way. Hreflang. It's the international tag of mystery. I will explain. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 29 of Confessions of an SEO 2025 Mountain Edition. Last week, I think I shared that things took an unexpected turn as I was exploring if indeed helpful content as a update, standalone updates, was a pretext to the launch of Gemini. Google used helpful content updates kind of as crowdsourced cleanup operation. Making us and site owners and webmasters kind of do the heavy lifting of deduping and tightening up topical content in their index. The result? A cleaner training data set for Gemini. Once Gemini launched at the end of 2023, helpful content's job was done. No more standalone updates need apply. I prepared an infographic. Anyone remember that word? It's a graphic timeline which supports my premise based on Google announcements. It's on AmericanWayMedia.com. It's called the Gemini and Helpful Content Timelines, and I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to take a look at it. You can always find the most recent episode of Confessions of an SEO on confessionsofanseo.com. And you're subscribing on your favorite podcast platform helps convince me to, keep going with it. Thank you to Ahrefs as a sponsor of this episode. Ahrefs Webmaster Tools, which are free to create an account with a verified ownership of your site. Within their Webmaster Tools, in addition to other features, there's a site audit tool. Now, this tool scans your website for 170 plus common technical and on-page SEO issues. So you can run a complete SEO audit of your website, identify, prioritize, and fix any technical or on-page issues. You can also monitor your website's health score over time using those charts and graphs and so much more. As always, again, Ahrefs account is free and you can be analyzing your website data. Today may be a little different than the conventionally unconventional type of confession you've grown to know and love and maybe expect. In this one, I want to actually help answer a question that was floating out there on a Facebook group, SEO Signals Lab. And the author asked a Shopify specific question related to the ability of Shopify to have different subdirectories of pages for different countries. I'll explain as this goes along in case you're not familiar with all the ins and outs of what I just said. So he wrote, Shopify has different subdirectories for different countries, and he gave an example of a URL for Canada and then another URL for Australia. The content that exists on each subdirectory is the same. And again, he provided examples. So he looked at the e-commerce SEO beginner's guide, one that says, for Canada and another one for Australia. Going on. My question is, wouldn't this be a case of mass duplication to try and gain rankings in different countries, and doesn't Google see it as so? The comments ranged from one to a couple, but the answer was not really in any of them in terms of what was actually going on. Now, I'll be the first to admit, not having worked deep into international e-commerce, this is kind of where Shopify is known first and foremost as a platform. I'll admit, I also wondered, was this going to be duplicate content? This is, a sort of historical point. I do know the guy who initially published a book on how to do international SEO. His name is Andreas Mueller. We're friends. I've done some work with him. The title of the book is International SEO, a compact guide, domain strategies, markup tips, linking advice, Hreflang implementations, and best of breed tools and more. Now, it is a small book. It's less than 100 pages, but it was first to the market on how to implement Hreflang. The book is out of print, but you can find them here and there. And right now, as of this recording, eBay has one on there at the moment. You may be wondering, what the heck is this, Carolyn? Okay, so there is the need for a distinction. If you're trying to sell, let's just use an example. You want to sell to someone in the United States. You may not be based in the United States, but you want to sell to them. And imagine if you were that person in the United States, you found a sales page Google served up to you, and it's this specific thing that you've been looking for all of your life, only in order to read it, digest it, and perhaps even purchase it. It requires you to both read in German and be fluent in converting currency. So the idea was that Shopify is doing is to serve up the version of the page for the reader in the language that is most used in that country, whatever the primary language is. Italy gets Italian. Germany gets German. India gets Hindi. Anyway, the person asking the question wasn't so much saying, should they do this? They were doing some forward thinking of a potential issue that if I did do this, isn't Google going to see all of these translated pages as basically the same content, compared to each other? And if you're a longtime listener, this is what I say about the helpful content, and maybe want to dig a little deeper. So anyway, in reading through the responses, what was said was basically different forms of saying, quote, it works, don't worry about it, write for your audience, or just make them unique. One of those options obviously takes a lot of faith in strangers you don't know, do not work with. And the other, if you just take it at face value, that's a lot of work. If you have to go through and make each page unique for your domain when you're just trying to sell to somebody in another country. I just really wanted to say, I appreciate what the author was trying to do. He was definitely understanding everything that was said and why. He brought some live examples to kind of bolster his point. And he continued to press that point because, frankly, no one could provide him with an answer. Well, that ends today. Shopify. They have, like I said, page over page set up for different countries. The United States and England, someone would say 2 countries divided by a common language. He kind of said, if these guys do it, why do they get away with duplicate content? And that's when I first knew, again, I had to get a grip on this topic. So first of all, what does Shopify do? There was some comment like this guy said, this is what they do. It's like word by word. And somebody said, I don't think so. Go back and check. It's like, okay, guy, that's not an answer. I looked at the URLs of some of the pages he shared. It was, again, for Shopify's e-commerce SEO guide for 2023. The URLs were all the same, except there was and the reason I'll go through that subdirectories, but it was basically, shopify.com/ and then the country initials. So AU is Australia, and then obviously the position was blog, and then the title of the page. There are a ton in this website. So it's AU, it's CA, it's ID, it's SG, it's CA, and so forth. Now, the reason these are called subdirectories is that these are pages on the same domain, shopify.com versus subdomains. Directories are basically another word for folder. And like I say, these are all on the same domain. This guy is right that when you compare the content on each one of these pages, like I did, except for the country designation in the URLs, everything is the same. I was only doing this in English. I guess what I wanted to say was I find it great, when we as professionals use enterprise examples like Google and Shopify. Since the author had kind of used Shopify, I thought I'd go to Google. And the reason that I thought I would do that was because of a statement that he had made. And I quote, "My point is, given what Shopify is currently doing, how does it help the end user? It just seems to be helping them, whoever is using these, help them rank content in different regions. Also, study the beast itself. Google's guidelines, and these are at developers.google.com. I don't see Google itself putting out exact copies of the same guidelines. Well, honestly, that's a bit of an assumption, because how could we know that this statement where Google itself doesn't put out exact copies of the same guidelines? We have to look for it, right? Well, it turns out they do indeed do the same thing as Shopify. There's a couple ways to do this, and Google opted for one of the two ways they recommend. So how did I find this out? Okay, I would like to share it with you. First, when you have any website, it should have a robots text file, which developers.google.com has. Within that robots text file, we've been advised you should have a sitemap. Well, it turns out on their robots.txt file, there is a sitemap URL listed. Now, this particular URL is a collection of other sitemaps that are pages that appear on developers.google. And they all had these URLs of the sitemaps. They all had the same pattern. It was sitemap _number _of _30.xml. Okay, so each one is the same except for the number. So it was like didn't come in numerical order, but it was basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way through 30. I always like to start at the beginning, and because I didn't know which one was going to contain the URLs related to Hreflang. Turns out most of the time you only really need to dig into one, and that one was sitemap 1 of 30. I could see exactly what others mean. Like once I pulled out the sitemap related to all the pages sitemap, I looked at it. There is some additional coding. It really looks very much like how we create sitemaps, but there's some additional stuff. And I know this could use a visual, but I'm going to do my best. There's always like the first URL, url.com/page1. But underneath it was some additional coding using XHTML with link attributes in the code. The code was something like rel equals, and then alternative, hreflang equals, then it would have like the language or the country designation. And then it would have a default version, and then it would continue listing all the separate versions that it had in the sitemap underneath the main URL. So I wanted to dig a little deeper and find out, well, what do these codes do? And it turns out they are what you might call messages to search engines. The first one is kind of like once Google's crawling the sitemap, they crawl the robots text first, and then they crawl the sitemap. So when they see all this code, it's like, hey, Google, these URLs are all the same content. They're just for different audiences. When you start breaking down all the little attributes in the string, there's a relationship statement, which is these pages are siblings, they are not strangers. And then it gives you the audience target. Basically, this specific version is intended for Hindi speakers. Don't show the English version to someone who prefers Hindi. And then, I love this one, there's a duplicate content protection when they do that. And what it says is these similar looking URLs are intentional. They are not accidental duplicates. So please don't penalize us for having multiple versions. These pages serve different purposes. And then, of course, who are they serving it to? So basically, they are instructions that will say if someone's in India searching, show them the HI version. When someone's browser is set to, let's say Indonesia, serve the ID version. It says group these URLs together as one content cluster, not separate competing pages. Man, I wish this were true for table of content links. So essentially, to cap it all together, what search engines do with this information is that it will index all the versions without any kind of duplicate content concerns, and it'll serve the right version based on the user language or location, and it consolidates ranking signals across all language versions. Bottom line, here's the answer, Mr. International Shopifyer. When you set up your XML map, formatting these together in a group, it's like putting GPS coordinates on your content that says this page belongs here for these people in this language. Ultimately, I'm not a person to follow the instructions of someone who just says, just do it and trust me. I like to know the why and how it works. And it kind of sounds like Mr. International Shopifyer, you do too. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. If you have questions about today's topic, text it to confessions at 512-222-3132. Thank you again to Ahrefs for sponsoring this episode. Ahrefs is a marketing platform that offers a site audit tool, part of their Webmaster toolset, which helps you monitor your website's health over time. Check out the link in the description. Indexilla is my search engine discovery tool designed to help get your pages found. You can find it at indexilla.io. My indexation research project, Crawl or No Crawl, continues, and you can become a sustaining member at $18 a month. You'll receive status reports to answer the question, is it me or is indexing off today? Search for Crawl or No Crawl. Thank you for listening, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.